We're smooth 98.1 FM. It is the 28th day of August 2023, and I welcome you especially into Business Express with Rotus Oddiri. Good morning, Rotus.
Good morning, Omas. Good morning to all our listeners, viewers, and it is a new week. We go again.
Every week we come back and try and make it better than we made it the previous week. That's what it is. And you know what they say, it's lonely at the top. That's the truth. You can't outsource your life. It's your life. So you have to come back and go again.
You must. You absolutely must.
Rotus, okay, a whole lot of figures are coming out. It seems like the season is a statistics season, but let's get first into this one. The big story, Nigeria economy grows by 2.51% in the second quarter of this year. But before you dig into that juicy details, let's get into the GDP growth in Nigeria. Let's look at the stock market because the business day has a story there of earnings per share growth for a select number of companies on the stock exchange for the half year this year. So help us understand what earnings per share is, and let's take it up from there.
Yeah. I always tell folks, please take an interest in the stock markets. You can build some wealth there. So I thought it was very interesting, a very interesting article from Business Day where they were looking at the earnings per share at least the highest earnings per share for a number of companies on the exchange. Your earnings per share is basically your net profits divided by your shares outstanding. And basically it just looks at how much money a company is making per each share of stock that it has. It's a valuation metric. The higher it is, I guess, the more valuable and maybe the more investors are willing to pay for each share of that company's stock. So that's what it is. Just a valuation metric. One of many valuation metrics that are used for publicly traded companies.
If you mentioned, if Rotus say it is important, then it's just like when lecturers come to class back in the days and say, we tell them, give us AOC, area of concentration, and then the next thing they keep hammering on a particular point and they don't tell you this is area, you just know something. There was a time you used to talk about there's the need to do this storage, invest in dollars, today, you are the wisest man who ever lived after the other one. But Rotus, dig into this. So who are those who top this the list for you?
Well, it was a bank. It was Fidelity Bank that had the highest earnings per share of all the companies that the Business Day looked at. Out of all of them, I think it was followed by Seplat Energy, Total Nigeria PLC, Okomo Oil, Presco, Dangote Cement, MTN Nigeria, Boa Foods, FCMB, and Geregu. It's important though. So I think Fidelity Bank, according to what business they calculated, earnings per share was like 184 naira per share. Seplat was at 37, Total 25. It's important not to compare earnings per share of a company in one sector to another one because they're in completely different sectors. So you want to compare your earnings per share of companies within the same sector. So you compare all the companies in the banking sector, or companies in oil and gas, companies in manufacturing, industrial, stuff like that. But it was Fidelity Bank. Fidelity Bank was the one that topped the list. So it was Fidelity, Seplat, Total, Okomo, Presco, Dangote Cement, MTN Nigeria, Boa Foods, FCMB, Geregu Power. It kind of points to some resilience. I guess we'll get to the economy in a moment, but it points to some resilience for the companies.
Okay, it looks like a good place to bring in the listener at this point. They can be part of this conversation by sending their messages up to 0809-444-0981. The number once again is 0809-444-0981. Expecting the message to come in shortly, but then we understand there is an important distinction to make when looking at the earnings per share for different companies. So what would this be?
Yeah. So that's what I was just talking about. You can't compare earnings per share for different companies. It has to be within that sector. So you can't say that Total is doing better than Okomo Oil because Total Nigeria has a higher earnings per share. You want to compare Total to companies within its own sector. But again, as far as the half year is concerned for 2023, was Fidelity that topped the list.
So this brings us to the GDP in itself, which is the main issue. So the half year 2023, how would you describe it? Is it surprising?
Yeah. Real quick though, Fidelity, they did have an annual general meeting, and so I think there was an update from there where they approved a capital raise, because with what's been going on with the foreign exchange movement, a lot of banks, I think UBA had United Bank of Accra had a road show where it looks like they're going to be raising capital. So Fidelity is going that route as well. So I think they're going to be doing a public offer where they'll be offering more shares to the public in order to raise capital as well. So it's an important thing to look at for the banking sector. You raise more capital for strategic reasons, for expansion. So that's something to look at in the banking sector, particularly what Fidelity is doing. But yeah, GDP 2.51%. Omas, as far as population growth is concerned, population is touching nearly 3%. I don't know, it's tepid growth for Nigeria's economy. Again, we're looking at the second quarter of the year. So we're looking at April, May, June. Those are those 3 months. So you still have some lingering effects of the cash naira scarcity issue from the first quarter. And then you've got the oil sector still struggling. That one has been in recession since 2020. So it was still non-oil growth that pushed the economy forward. So Almas, we're not growing as fast as we should. We really need to grow. We need to grow much faster.
But if you look at it this way, since it is not negative growth at this point, we as people who are positive minded, we say any growth at this time that is not negative is a welcome development. What would you say to that?
Well, if negative growth means you're in a recession, if you have 2 consecutive quarters of negative growth, and there are many sectors that are in recession, like I said, oil is in recession, the mining sector is in recession, there's so much smuggling. There was one viral video that was going around this weekend of smugglers or something going on in one particular state, I can't remember. There are sectors that are struggling, and then even other sectors that are growing, they are not growing fast enough to create jobs and to basically be more productive. So to say that, okay, yeah, we're not in the negative region. Well, yeah, but I mean, let me look at some of these sectors. So for example, if you look at the top 10 contributing activities to the second quarter, number 1 was crop production, right? Contributed 20.66%. However, if you look at the growth in that particular sector, agriculture, right? Where is that? Where are those agricultural figures? Crop production was it 2%? Let me send this over to you just so you can see how we're struggling.
Top 10 contributing activities, second quarter 2023, real GDP, crop production. Okay.
Yeah, so but that's how much it contributed. But as far as its own growth, crop production only grew by 1.8%, right? And your first quarter it grew by 1.993. Yeah, so I mean, historically, the agri sector, agri overall, it did 1.5%. It actually contracted in the last quarter. Again, GDP is the market value of goods and services, the output of goods and services in a given period of time. So think about the agricultural sector. You have, yes, crop production is your number 1 contributor, the highest contributor, 20% in the second quarter. But there is, what challenges are we facing in agriculture? You've got
security.
Thank you.
The chief of it.
The president has declared, what is it now?
Emergency.
State of emergency. So when people say, Rotus, will I eat GDP, or all these numbers that you are reeling out here, what does it mean? You have to really break it down and say, okay, even though crop production is your number 1, if your number 1 contributor to GDP in the second quarter is facing a state of emergency and the insecurity, all these challenges, then what are that's the problem. That is the challenge, right? The sectors are not growing as fast as they.
But comparatively, looking at it in the same period in 2022, it looks like it's better. But it's when you compare it between the first quarter of 2023 and the second quarter that's when you have that, you see there's a slight decrease.
Yeah, and you want to compare year on year as well to how it did in the prior year, which is why we have Q2 of 2022. So I mean, you just go down, you look at manufacturing, for example, right? It did about 2.2% in this quarter. If you break down, I think there are about 13 subsectors in manufacturing. Look at textile, apparel, and footwear. It is in recession.
Yes.
-4%.
-4%, yes.
In the second quarter, -3.6 in the first quarter, -2 last year. So your textiles, apparel, and footwear, it's a sector
in a recession already.
But look at our textile industry. We import our textiles. We're not exporting as much as we should. There's a power issue there. Many of them shut down. So that Nigeria right now is just not. Look at oil refining. Anyway, that one, there's no refineries, and look at that -35% for the first quarter. Anyway, that one shouldn't surprise anybody. Well, look at road transport. I think road transport was affected by the removal of fuel subsidies, which reduced the amount of activities there, because you can see it's contracted by like -55%. And Omas, how do we move our goods and services around Nigeria? Is it by rail? It's
by
almost
road. Yes.
Almost all by road. So you can imagine how that impacts the. I mean, telcos did well. ICT, 8% growth. Telecommunications, 9%. What else here? Trade. Look at trade. Only about 2% growth. So, look, we Nigeria needs to. You need electricity. There's this. You can't get past it. The need for power. We need to be more productive. We need a lot of solid reforms, to cut across the economy, because you can't be doing. I think IMF and World Bank saying we'll do, maybe if we're lucky, we'll do 3% growth for the full year 2023.
But Rotus, yes, reforms take time, and reforms comes with pains. Do you think we have the patience? Nigerians have the patience at this time of our national life for it?
That is an excellent question. And that is where communication is necessary. You have to communicate this to people. You've got to do, try and cushion the blow with palliatives and so on as much as you can. This Nigeria, and see, this is why leadership matters. And if somebody doesn't, if you go through what we went through over the last 8 years, you now have to come out of that hole, and you've got to, push forward more, and it's going to make it harder. So no, I don't think Nigerians have the patience, but you have to communicate with them. They have to see on the side of government, they have to see government also cutting costs, no more running around with flashy cars and all these other things. They've got to, if you are telling me to cut my coats according to my size, and I see you doing it as well, they are more likely to understand what's going on, but the economy is just not where it needs to be.
But for a quick one, I've got Omoba Yusuf who sent in a message. Probably you might need a clarification on this, responding to the share earnings per share. He said 198 Naira earnings per share for Fidelity, and the price per share is not more than 8 Naira. Not possible.
Yeah. So you're taking, so it's in Kobo. Sorry, that's in Kobo, right? Yes. So it's basically, I think that comes out to 1.84 Naira. Sorry about that. Now 1.84 Naira, because they are taking the share price, or rather net profit, and dividing by the common shares outstanding. So thank you for pointing that out.
Your listen. Our listeners, when it comes to business,
they're sharp.
Money matters. the Kobos, in the sense they follow it to the detail. Now I've got this one from Babatunde Ala, who says, Rotus, there are lots of sectors: agriculture, textile, manufacturing, and the likes. Government should look more in this direction and dare to make our economy a productive one. That's Babatunde Ala, and that's the size of the show, Rotus, this morning.
Look, it's a great point, and we just hope that we can get it right. We hope we can get it right. We have to. We don't have a choice. We don't have anywhere else to go.
Well, it's a fine morning. Have a great day, Rotus, and thanks for your time this morning.
Thank you so much, Omas. Thanks to all our listeners, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow.
All right, there goes Rotus. My name is Omatseye Atsenuwa. Good morning.
Press brought to you by Interswitch. Transaction solutions you can depend on.